Oh, what is the upskis, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GXGamerCast. We're on episode 104 of my gaming show, where once a week I just has to talk about video games, whether they're new games that I'm playing, old games from my past. It doesn't matter. Video games. And today I'm finally doing it after weeks and weeks of pushing it. We doing a versus, baby. And if you can read the title, it's a pretty fun one. We got Crash Bandicoot versus the Spyro the Dragon trilogy. Now, excuse me, with that saying, I am going to be focused on the Reignited trilogy and the Insane trilogy, the Boys for Bob, because it's made by both of them. It's the most up-to-date one that if you're going to play them, you're going to play those. And I haven't actually ever played the original Crash Bandicoot games, so it's in my best interest to be focused on those games. So that's what I'm going to be reviewing, and just the trilogy games. I'm not talking about anything after Naughty Dog, nothing after Insomniac. We're just going to talk about those three games, oh baby. But before we get into the versus talk, let me tell you what I've been up to over the last week or so. As I always encourage you, the viewer, the listener, let me know what you've been up to over the last week or so. It doesn't matter if you're playing video games. What video games are you playing? Have you seen any good movies lately? And what TV shows are you binge watching right now? As my wife and I binge watch The Boys Season 4, and that bitch is done. We have finished off Season 4, and it was a great season. I mean, like I said, it wasn't the best season of The Boys, no, but still great, very entertaining season of The Boys. A little bit more of the same, and, you know, this kind of happens with when you know Season 5 is the final season of the show. So there was some setup, a little bit of cliffhangerage for sure, and we're set up for a grand finale in Season 5. I can't wait for that, but it's going to be a while. But if you haven't gone out and checked The Boys out yet, you haven't gotten into that universe, no better time than now, man. There's tons of content. You got 4 seasons, you got a spin-off show, you got an animated spin-off show, and a prequel show on the way as well. So there's a ton of stuff to dive into with The Boys, and it's excellent. So yes, if you've checked out Season 4, what did you think of it? Was it your favorite, least favorite? Let me know. I still thought it was great. I'd hit that with an 8 out of 10. And we got The Bear, Season 3, my goodness. So I only have the season finale left to watch, and I have admittedly, there's been 2 or 3 times over the last week where I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch it, I'm going to finish it off, and I was like, but I don't want it to end yet. I don't want to have no more Bear to watch. So I've been kind of pushing it back, saving the finale for when I just can't wait no more, and it's getting there. But I have to shout out, don't remember what episode it was, might have been 8 or something, but the episode with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back into, oh my goodness gracious, I cannot believe I didn't bawl like a baby during that episode. What an insane, just the acting levels, the emotions, what a fucking roller coaster of an episode. I was I was just going through it watching that one. I was annoyed by Jamie Lee Curtis because, she's just acting so annoying, in a good way. She's just pulling off this character, and oh my goodness, I've never been in, my wife, we do not have children, so I've never been in, that boat, man. How stressful that is, and my goodness, ladies out there, if you're listening, I bow down to you all. You are so much, I already knew this, but y'all are so much tougher than anyone in the world gives y'all credit for. Oh my goodness. And just to watch mother and daughter with their just crazy dramatic relationship that they had, and for this moment to kind of bring them together, it was just an insanely magical episode of television. That's going to go down as one that's probably going to stick with me for a while. Wow, The Bear, man. It's just such a sensational show. I love it so much. And Jamie Lee Curtis now, her 2 or 3 appearances in this show, she has knocked it out of the park. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Whether I knew it or not, I've been watching movies with Jamie Lee. She's been around forever, right? And I've watched her in her I think her first movie was Halloween or something like that. I watched her in that. I watched her in Freaky Friday a zillion times with Lindsay Lohan, and I'm still loving her in movies Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is currently my favorite movie ever. She crushed it in that, and she's crushing it in The Bear. Jamie Lee, if you're listening, you're crushing it right now, and I love you. So if you have not checked out The Bear, as always, highly, highly recommend it. It is a little stressful to watch. I will say, if you don't like watching shows where it's super tense and there's a lot of screaming and yelling and arguing and that, then okay. I mean, my wife doesn't like that stuff. She's coming around to Always Sunny in Philadelphia finally, but when we initially watched it, she was very turned off with it because it's just people screaming and yelling over each other. But that's part of the thing. But anyway, it's just an amazing show. So check out The Bear. It's unbelievable. And oh my goodness, wait, one more show to talk about, The Challenge. Got back into The Challenge since we're done with The Boys. So we dived into The Challenge USA. Don't know what season or anything. I think there's only one season available anyway. So we're diving back in there. And I'm pretty amped about this season because there are some survivors, some favorite survivors of ours that are in this season of The Challenge. We got, I think his name is Ben and Tyson. My wife loves Tyson. I like Tyson, but I don't love him because he looks like somebody that I do not like. So every time I see him, I'm like, ugh, but it's not him, so I have to get over that. But my boy Ben's there, and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. So that's intense. I think we only watched the first 2 episodes, and it's a slow burning show. The first little bit, it's everyone kind of getting introduced to each other. They're partying, they're hanging out, we're learning. Okay, because there's so many people, and you get the initial challenges and stuff. But yeah, it's The Challenge. It's a very fun kind of it's a very much so turn your brain off show. I don't have to sit there and watch it, intently like I am The Bear or The Boys. It's a show that I'd sit there, play my Switch, looking up every now and again, like, I know what's going on slightly. Good. And that's what The Challenge is for myself and my wife, because we both play games while she plays on her phone and I play on my Switch. So, guess what? I watched a movie. Like I said, I was scouting out 2 movies, and I watched neither of them. I watched something else. And that movie is an all-time classic, still is an all-time classic, and I have never seen it before. Sad to say it, but I've seen it now, so I can proudly say I have finally watched Aliens. That's the second one. I watched Alien last October, because I haven't watched that one either. I've seen clips of the movies, of course. How couldn't you? There's so many iconic scenes from the first 2 Alien movies, and I just never sat down and watched them in their entirety, and I finally did 1986's Aliens by James Cameron, the man that does Avatar now. He used to make a lot of movies back in the day, like a lot, not just one every decade. He used to make, in the 80s, he was crushing it. Terminator 2, he had Terminator, he had Alien in the late... Dude's killing it, but I wish James Cameron was still making a whole bunch of movies. Anyway, Aliens is still a spectacular film. I love it. I love it, man. Terminator 2 is a favorite of mine as well, and especially just for how amazingly well that movie has aged. The special effects are insane. It's one of the greatest, if not the greatest action movie ever put to film. It's insane. And it still holds up so well, and so does Aliens. And so did Alien. Alien was still spectacular, but Aliens is way more action-packed. You are like the title says, in the first movie, there is one alien, give or take. In Aliens, there's numerous aliens. They're going to this colony, and it is swarmed with these things, and they're all over the place. And the only thing that I didn't love about the movie was the first half hour, 45 minutes. Some of the characters, some of the dialogue is very old. That's all I'll say. It's a little I don't really know how to do it, but I don't know what I'm going on. But if you watch it now, you might be like, all right, it's a little basic. The characters are a little basic, and in fact, they still use these type of characters. There's always a female Marine named something Ez, in this case, Ramirez, and they still use that trope in so many action movies. There's just female badass Latina, and yeah, we have maybe that's where it started, right here. But she's awesome. Ramirez is dope. The characters are classic. They're fun. I have a little bit of a quirk with Bill Paxton's character. He's just the very down in the dumps guy. He's like, oh man, oh jeez, what are we gonna do now, guys? We're doomed. And he also says, game over, man, game over. I watched it and I didn't hear him say that once. Rather, the version I watched had it cut out. I looked it up on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, it is from Aliens. What the fuck? Anyway, the movie is awesome, dude. The aliens are so fucking cool. Like, probably the coolest looking thing ever is the xenomorph. It is so cool, so iconic. And there is a scene in this movie that I had to show my wife because I was blown away at it. It is so fast, but it's the scene with the little girl and she's down in the grate in the water, and the fucking alien just emerges from the water behind her, and I was like, how did they get that? That is just one of the coolest looking shots in a movie I've ever seen. And it's like, maybe 2 seconds, but I was just blown away. I was like, fuck, you just don't get it. They don't look like that anymore, man. I wish they did. I don't know if it was special effects that still look good now, or if that was a practical effect, and somehow they just got this incredible shot. And I just appreciate practical effects so much. And like, my dad used to make me watch like Jason and the Argonauts, like old school stop animation, and I grew to appreciate stop animation and practical effects and all that stuff. And to this day, I really can't get behind like the way that special effects look now. The green screens, it just really takes me out of movies. But the atmosphere was out of control. The action was so good. The suspense was, what an all-time. It still holds up. Like, watching this for the first time, it's like an 8.5 still. This is a great movie if it came out today, to me. But if for 1986, this is an all-time classic. Timeless movie. It's right up there with Terminator 2. It's still just watches so good. It was highly entertaining. I loved it. Loved my time watching Aliens, so if that doesn't sell you to watch it, go fucking watch it. Watch them both. Aliens, they're both fantastic. After that, don't worry about them. But admittedly, I saw the commercial at work for the newest Alien movie coming out. Nubius or some shit? I don't know. But it looks good. It looks pretty good. And I was like, fuck, I still gotta watch Aliens, so I decided not to watch the other 2 movies I scouted out, and I watched Aliens, but feeling the movie again. After I watched Aliens, I was very encouraged to watch more movies, unlike what Godzilla 2014 did to me. My goodness, that movie drained me. Don't watch that movie. It's so mediocre, except for the look of the Godzilla. Anyway, let's talk some video games before we get into the verses. Only playing Metal Gear Solid 5 right now. Again, that's all I want to play. I love this fucking game. I cannot wait to talk about it. Hopefully I get to talk about it next week. There's a part in the story that I'm at right now that's like really making me push through the main story because I like kind of have to, or shit will be not good for me. So I'm just kind of plowing through some main missions right now. I'm almost at mission 30. So again, have no idea if I'm close to the end or not. I am just loving every minute of it. Can't wait to talk about Metal Gear Solid 5. And I got in some Sprout Valley this week since we watched the challenge. Got to play a little Sprout Valley and just a little itty bit. Not very much at all. I can't not stop playing Metal Gear Solid 5. All I want to do is play that game because it's so fucking good. And my goodness, that is it. So let me know what y'all have been playing. What have you been up to over the last whatever amount of time? And let's do it, baby. Let's do a versus. It's time to put up Crash Bandicoot versus Spyro the Dragon. Who was the better mascot? Who's got the better trilogy? Only one way's to find out by my information. I'm just kidding. Let's just talk about video games. Fun times. Okay, so we're doing versus, which means there's rules and stuff. So whoever has the most categories won by the end of the versus is the winner of the versus. Pretty simple, but let's go through the categories that I'm going to do, starting with the characters, the sidekick, and the main villains. Then we'll go into the music, the graphics and environments. And then we're going through the overall game, and we're going to put each game up against each other, Crash 1 versus Spyro 1, and so on and so forth. through the 3 games and put them up against each other and see which of the 3 games are the best between each other. If that makes it'll all make sense as we get going. So we're gonna start off with character design and the sidekick and the main villains. So let's start with Crash and his overall design, because back in the 90s when these games got started, everyone was looking for mascots. Mascots were huge. Everyone wanted to have their equivalent of Mario and Nintendo. Everyone was looking for that. Sony was searching. You had Sega. Well, Sega also had a pretty good one in Sonic the Hedgehog. So everyone's looking for that type of mascot, especially Sony. Sony still kind of to this day has not solidified a permanent mascot, but they started off in the PlayStation 1 era. They threw out these 2 designs. I mean, PlayStation didn't, but Insomniac and Naughty Dog did. Naughty Dog being behind Crash Bandicoot, Insomniac, Spyro the Dragon. They put out these guys, and quickly people latched onto them. Like, hey, this could be the mascot for PlayStation right here. And I don't know why people talked like that back then, but they did. I can confirm that. I was alive back then. I was maybe I was only like 4, but I knew it. I heard that shit. So, looking at these characters, I'm looking at their kind of remastered designs. I would say the original design of Spyro admittedly was a little bit more cute. But the great thing about Spyro's design, I feel, is that not only is he a little bit cute, but he's also badass. He's a fucking dragon, bro. He's a dragon. And I think my favorite thing about Spyro is the colors purple. That is a bold choice, man, for the 90s. And if you're going for this badass character, but I love this purple. I love that shade of purple and the way that it kind of goes with the goldy orange that Spyro's got going on with his kind of scales down the middle and his horns and wings. Spyro has wings. He's a dragon. He's 4-legged. He can shoot fire. There's a lot to like with Spyro the Dragon, and that kind of iconic sideways smile that he's got going on, man. Like, yeah, I always thought Spyro was a very awesome character. And he talks. Spyro does talk. I think at one point he was voiced by Elijah Wood, who is the main hobbit from Lord of the Rings and stuff. So, I mean, I'm not really going to take into account, like, who they were voiced for by. That's not really going to take into account. But Spyro, in the first game, he was definitely more, like, arrogant, a little more uptight, like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm confident and shit. But as the games go on, he kind of loses that, and he gets more balanced, a little bit more heroic, and just a good guy, like more just your general hero. And then you got Crash Bandicoot, who is a lab experiment gone wrong and has been escaped. So in a way, he is like a Frankenstein's monster that is mixed with a Bandicoot. But he's cool looking. I mean, you look at Crash, he's very zany. Like, I immediately get vibes of Taz, the Tasmanian Devil from the Bugs Bunny series. That's where I would draw the comparisons pretty quickly. He can spin around. He's got this, I like his orange color. I love the color of Crash with his blue jorts. You know, the jean shorts that everyone's dad has a pair of that's way too short that they cut off personally to make them that short. My dad personally had just like a whole array of these things. Anyway, back to Crash. Really cool design. Like, he's classic 90s cool, zany, wow, man, but he doesn't talk. He doesn't say anything. And I found throughout, I played the Crash trilogy for the first time this year. You can go back and listen to that review. It wasn't long ago, hence why I kept this, kind of pushed this back, because I didn't want it to be too close to the Crash talk that we just did. But Crash looks cool, man, and he doesn't talk, and I found out, all you really find out throughout the 3 games is that he's a lab experiment, he doesn't talk, and there really is no other further character development. Crash is what he is. He's kind of crazy, but he's loyal to his friends, and he just doesn't want to be taken back to the lab by Cortex. So I guess that's simple. But yeah, I mean, he's got big shoes, got big feet, he's got gloves on his hands. Apparently his gloves have changed, throughout some of the games. I have never noticed, honestly. Never noticed that. So, all that being said, Crash, I do love his color combo. The orange and the blue, the red shoes with the white laces. That's a great 90s kind of looking thing. I think Spyro, though, is just more classic, more timeless. He can you can still throw him out there today, and it's like, yeah, he's a relevant character, and he is still going strong. He is the mascot of the Skylanders thing, or was, if that was even still going. I think Crash is a little bit more, put in his time frame in the 90s, kind of that goofy, wacky, zany character. I still think he's cool looking as fuck, and he could develop into a great zany character, and maybe he has, I do believe he has spoken in the later games, and I did just read that the creator or whatever regrets the decision of making Crash a silent protagonist. I heard he was supposed to have character and all that, but took it away. So, I mean, yeah, maybe a decision at the time that they regret, or now they regret, but who knows why they decided why he shouldn't talk. Maybe trying something new. He never talked throughout the original trilogy. And then, so, with that being said, I am giving the edge to overall character design to Spyro the Dragon. He could do more, they both can end up doing quite a lot of things, but I mean, Spyro's a dragon, he can shoot fire, he can fucking fly, and, Crash just can. He can spin, he can jump pretty high, he can, I don't know, he can wiggle his tongue probably pretty good. There are some pictures, honestly, that I've seen of Crash that kind of freak me out, especially the older PS1 versions. His teeth are just really big, and that grin that he does is it can kind of put me off a little bit. So for me, easily, I'm going Spyro the Dragon here. And in terms of their sidekicks, they're both very similar in terms of what they do. They're kind of just like your health bar, and the more of them you collect them, they get stronger and you can take more hits. But, I mean, Unga Bunga, or what, I don't even know what his fucking name is. That's how just not good at this I am. But I think it's Unga Bunga. He's the kind of tiki mask looking dude. And I like him. He was I felt like he had way more character development throughout the game than Crash did. He's got a rival, another fucking tiki mask that he ends up going down with in the fucking third game, and he's there explaining shit to you as you go on, and he does the booga blah or whatever the fuck, and that's pretty key, man. That's pretty cool. And then you have Sparks, the dragonfly for Spyro. A good, solid little dude. He doesn't really do much. He'll help out collecting gems and stuff. You could get different colors. I think green is the lowest, then the blue, and then you get the golden Sparks, which gives you 3 hits, I think. You might get 4 once you lose him, or whatever the fuck. But he's solid. I don't think he really talks. He kind of just goes buzz buzz and stuff like that. He does get some dedicated levels by the third game. There are some levels for Sparks, which are pretty solid. They're not, amazing or anything, but he does get involved in the game. But there's, he's not really connected to the story, I don't think, outside of just being buddies with Spyro. So I'd give the edge to the sidekick for Crash Bandicoot. I like the design of the mask. It's a fucking tiki mask. That's pretty freaking key. And then we get to the villains, where there's a little bit of a difference here. So with Crash, you have Dr. Neo Cortex, who is the villain and side villain throughout all the games. He's in all 3 games. And then Spyro has 3 different villains, a different villain in each game. So Crash, you get that consistency with the characters. Oh, here comes Cortex. What's his wacky idea this time? So I really enjoy that. I like Cortex. He's got a really just classic mad scientist design. This massive head, wacky fucking bald hairdo thing going on there, and some weird ass, I think he's got an N on his forehead. And yeah, he's a mad scientist, so he's always coming up with these crazy inventions. Pretty classic stuff. He invented, in a way, or created Crash Bandicoot. So his whole deal is just trying to get his creation back. He's like, yo, you're mine. Get back here. I want to experiment on you or some shit. And throughout the games, he gets a little more pushover-y and a little more goofy and stuff like that. I like Neo Cortex. He's pretty good. And there's some other doctor guy, I think he shows up in the third game. And then you have some, well, fuck, they don't return. The bosses in the third game, they're pretty memorable for me because they show up in the Crash Bash game, which has no relevance to this versus, but I'm just talking about it because I enjoyed the bosses that were in the third game, Tiny and was it Crocodile or Crocodile, or I don't know what his name, but he was some fucking Australian crocodile guy. He was cool, but they aren't return characters. They're just cool characters in the third game, but they're not the main villains or anything. I really like Cortex. He's a good wacky guy. He pairs pretty decently. It's almost kind of like Roadrunner and almost like Wile E. Coyote, especially how many inventions that Coyote does, and I don't know, maybe more like a mixture of Taz and the Roadrunner is like Crash Bandicoot. Anyway, a lot of Looney Tunes references right here. Shit, bro, I didn't actually expect for Crash to win this one, but I'm giving it the main villains as well, which means it wins this category 2 out of 3. So yeah, it looks like for characters, sidekick, and main villains, your winner is Crash Bandicoot. Very impressive. I mean, I don't know, if we could redesign Crash to a modern look, what are the kids wearing nowadays? I see a lot of kids wearing what the hell are kids wearing right now? I've been seeing it and I don't understand it. It's not turtlenecks, is it? I don't know. Could we put Crash Bandicoot in a turtleneck and see if that works? Maybe that'll get everybody back. Regardless, there you go. Fucking Crash Bandicoot wins characters, sidekicks, and main villain. Wait, I didn't even talk about the main villains of fucking Spyro. Maybe that would help out a little bit. So, the main villain in the first Spyro is very forgettable. It's just Quart or Nyart or something like that. He's whatever. He's kind of a just big goofball that's stealing up all the eggs or whatever the fuck. He's very forgettable, very whatever. The second game is Riptide? I think Riptide. Ripto is the main villain of the second game. Pretty solid. Like, again, they're pretty forgettable because they don't stick around. You don't really get a whole lot of those characters. I will say the most memorable one for me is the third main villain. I don't remember her name, but she's like that kind of toad, serpenty, fat queen thing. But we also get the introduction of that bunny girl that everyone fucking loves, and she starts out as a villain, but by the end she ends up being your friend. Spoiler alert for the 1998 or 99 Spyro game, my apologies, but yeah, that goes down. So she's not technically the main villain, but the big serpent lady, she's fine. She's just like, she makes the bunny girl go do all her bad work, all the dirty work and stuff, and then hence why she turns on her. But yeah, regardless, the three different villains, yeah, you get variety there, but I like the ongoing rivalry of Cortex and Crash Bandicoot better, so I'm giving them the edge still, and your winner still is Crash Bandicoot. Let us now move to the second category, which is the music of these games. So I played the opening themes of both games, and obviously there's much more music behind these games than their opening themes, so I'm not just judging it on their opening themes, but I'm not going to sit here and play 30 different tracks from each of the trilogy games and we can just compare. Now, I personally, this one is very personal preference-wise. I personally remember and feel like I prefer the music in Crash Bandicoot. I like the opening track a lot more than the opening theme for Spyro the Dragon, though I think Spyro's is really good as well. I just like the theme. It's more drums in the Crash Bandicoot. If it's got drums and stuff I'm a sucker for drums, so me personally, it's a pretty quick win for Crash Bandicoot in this one. Nothing against the Spyro music. It's really, really good too. Both of these games have very good music, and yeah, I just prefer the sound and the style of Crash Bandicoot. It's just a little more rhythmic, and that's what I'm all about. So I am giving the edge to Crash Bandicoot in sound and music. So now we go to graphics and environment. So with this one, they're both made by Toys for Bob. We're talking the remastered trilogy games here, and both trilogies are downright gorgeous. I have to give them a wash in terms of overall graphics, because it's on the same engine, it's the same people that made it. So it's a wash right there. So we're going to have to go over to the theming of the games and the environments that you're going to. And it's a little bit different because Spyro's, their levels are bigger. They're open, there's more areas to explore, and Crash Bandicoot is a more point A to point B platformer. You start here and you're going down there, and there may be one or two side paths with a bonus level or some shit, but that's pretty much it. And in terms of Crash Bandicoot, you don't have as much variety in terms of areas that you're going to. The areas that you do go to are downright gorgeous. Of course, you got your jungles and your kind of, I don't know, tropical tiki sort of environments and stuff like that. They definitely do open up the environment styles in the third game. There's like some medieval shit going on. Ow, my finger. But there's some medieval shit going on out there, which is pretty good. And of course, they got the ice levels. There are water levels. My favorite ones in terms of the theme and the look of them in Crash Bandicoot are like the sciencey looking levels, the Cortex's tower, and like, I don't know if it's like a power plant or factory levels. Those ones really popped with the shiny the shiny metals and the like bright, I don't know, neon-y lights and the fucking goo that's all over, bright colors and shit, really, really popped out. But where Spyro wins me over is the amount of areas you're going to. You're going to many different worlds, and yes, you're doing that as well in Crash Bandicoot. You're going to like your ice world, your sand areas, your factories, your jungles, and shit like that. But in Spyro, it's bigger, there's more to search, there's more environment to see. So I will give the edge in terms of graphics and environments to Spyro the Dragon. So at this point, where are we sitting? We got Crash Bandicoot is currently up 2-1 over Spyro the Dragon, but now we get to the most important of all the categories, which is the gameplay / the games. Who's got the better games? So we're going to go through each of their games, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, and we'll see which games are the best. Starting with Spyro the Dragon, the first game in the franchise. Makes sense. And this one's pretty simple. You are out there in these open worldy levels, not to the open world level that we have today, but these kind of like think like smaller Mario Odyssey. You're just kind of out there in this environment level, and you can go around, you can go back, you can go forward, you can go all around searching around for gems that are like your currency, your coins, in Mario, stuff like that. And your main objective is to find the eggs. You're looking for these dragons that got taken away or some shit. Pretty simple, it's not a big story, not big epic fucking crazy shit. It's simple. It's a kid-friendly game, and it's very, very easy, I will say, especially the first Spyro the Dragon. Stupid easiness. Very, very easy, very kid-friendly, very easy for a young kid to get into the series. They get a little bit trickier, and yes, there are a tricky spot in the first game here and there, but I remember just flying through the first game, destroyed every single boss, not a problem at all. And Spyro in this game can just do more than Crash Bandicoot can. Like I said, it can jump. Spyro can jump, run, glide, and breathe fire. So that's a big one. I mean, I've never seen Crash Bandicoot breathe any fire. And I feel like there's better variety in the level design in the first Spyro the Dragon, because there's just more to do. You're not on just like a singular path, point A to point B. You are, in a way, but there's a lot more exploration, and I just preferred the level design in Spyro. There was no infuriating levels like there was in Crash Bandicoot 1. We'll get there in a second. But there were some levels that weren't the best. Some of the flying levels were pretty fucky, I do remember. But still, outside of that, it was a very, very easy game overall. A fun challenge to 100%. I got all the platinums in the Spyro games. I got nowhere near in Crash Bandicoot. There are some... It's also kind of like... It's a funny, goofy game as well. So is Crash. But in Spyro, like, the characters, the enemies that you're fighting, they're, like, goofy. They're doing goofy things. They're making funny faces at you. They die in funny ways, fairly kid-friendly ways, and shit like that. It's a fun, little... I don't want to say challenging game. Absolutely not. It's a fun game to get the 100%. It's really not that hard to get the 100%. If I can do it in a platforming game that I'm generally like not very good at. I don't remember how many deaths I had in Spyro, if I had any. I know I had a insane amount of Crash Bandicoot deaths. So let's go over to there. I think Spyro the Dragon is a very good introductory game to the franchise. And then there's Crash Bandicoot. So Crash is a more point A to point B. You start here, and your objective is to get to the end, collect the gem, and collect apples and break the boxes along the way. If you want to 100% it, you gotta hit all the boxes, get all the apples, get all the bonus levels, and shit like that. So it's pretty simplistic in the gameplay. It's just jumping. You have a spin attack. You can jump on enemies. You can jump on boxes. Outside of that, I think there is a crawl, which you rarely have to use, and it kind of sucks. You crawl very, very slowly and kind of silly looking, honestly. But there are some levels in this game that I would never want to play again. Certain bridge-related levels, if you will. If you want to hear me rant about them in full, go listen to the Crash Trilogy review, because I went fucking off on those two levels. Alone, those two levels alone was like 2/3 of my deaths in that game, because it's just horrendously made. It's just a very unfun, badly designed level, and I fucking hate it. Though, in Crash Bandicoot, I will give them the edge in the boss fights. The boss fights were, actually, I'm not going to say challenging, but they weren't just pushovers. I feel like all the bosses in the first Spyro game, even the final boss, was very, very easy, which isn't really a complaint. It's just like, it's good for the market that they were going for, which is fine. But I like the bosses better in Crash Bandicoot. But this game can take years off of your life, if you will, if you try to get everything in this game. I tried a few, like you can go back and do like time trials, you can go back and try and collect everything, shit like that. In Spyro, it's a little more backtracky. You'll have to the series overall is a little bit more backtracky to collect everything. If you miss things, you'll just have to go back into the levels and figure out which gems that you missed. Some of them are hidden pretty well. If I do remember, I had to look up a couple of them, fuck, you hid that really well. With Crash, it's just a lot more challenging. It's very difficult to get the 100% in Crash. With Spyro, it can be a little bit more tedious, but I found it very enjoyable overall. So I am giving the winner of the intro games for the series to Spyro the Dragon. So we go to the sequels now. We'll start with, let's do the Crash game this time. We got Crash 2 Cortex's Revenge? Is that what it's? Cortex Strikes Back. I always mix up the second and third game. I always think the second game is Warped and the third game is Cortex Strikes Back. But nope, it's the other way around. And this is a really good sequel. They definitely fixed up some things. There are still some levels that were definitely nowhere near as awful as the bridge levels. The game is still challenging, though. I do remember dying a lot of times in the second game as well, but I found out noticeably that the game is a lot faster, the controls are more responsive, and Crash can do a little bit more stuff now. He can, crouch and slide, do a crouch slide thing. That's awesome. Oh, and one thing about the first game that they took away in the second game and all the games prior is at the end of the level in the first game, you get smashed by all the boxes that you missed. One of the best things ever. Why would they take that out? I can't believe that, but sadly that's not in any of the other Crash games. And they also kind of changed up the overworld in the second Crash game. The first one kind of had a Donkey Kong Country situation. You're on a map and you just bounce from level to level to level to the next world and so on and so forth. In Crash 2, it's more like Spyro, where it's you get an overworld and you just jump into these portals. It's pretty good. It's not the best one. I think their best one is in the third game, but they have they started to do more of the levels that were awesome. You get to do more of the riding levels. You're on the adorable panda pup one was so freaking good. So they started doing more of the levels where you're running away from something, just fast platforming, really fun. There were some levels that messed me up. I do remember that, but none that made me die 50 plus times in a row because the level was so broken. The game had a way more fair challenge. That's for sure. The level design was much better, and I really love the level when you're running away from the giant polar bear. Very similar to in the first game when you're running away from the boulder, but this one's better. It's just way better. It's just better. You get some good boss fights in this game as well. You get a jetpack at some of the later levels, which was pretty fun. The controls were fucky, I do remember that, but hey, you get a freaking jetpack. That's awesome. And of course, Dr. Neo Cortex returns again, and you fight him in the final fight with the jetpack. I enjoyed this game quite a bit, man. It was just better graphics, much better control, way better level design than the first one. It was a very good improvement over the first game. I was rather impressed. And then you got Spyro 2 right? Nope, Spyro 2 Ripto's Revenge. This one also a very strong upgrade over the first game. Better level design, just more fun, better things to do, more fleshed out characters now, and villain in Ripto, but admittedly I barely remember anything about Ripto other than it was definitely a little bit more memorable slightly than the first games, and the boss fight was way better. The boss fights in Spyro 2 are much, much better. I think there was one that was like really, really hard for no reason. I remember hearing something about that, but regardless, the boss fights are a lot better. The overworld stays the same. I mean, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I enjoyed the overworld of Spyro, where you kind of have like an open area and there's like portals to find and you go in them, and then there's levels to do. And there's also some new abilities that Spyro can find. There's like a flying one. There's certain levels where you're just flying. They can be a little hit or miss, some of those ones, but you also can find other power-ups, like you can get a shield that just prevents you from getting hurt, and there's a flame boost where I believe you can just like, rather you can hold down like a stream of fire, or you can just shoot it off as many times as you want. So I don't think you're collecting eggs in Spyro 2. I think now you're collecting these like, what is it, like orbs or something like that. I don't think you're collecting dragons in this one, if I do remember correctly. I think something to do with orbs, but there's also a lot of these orb challenges now, and some of them were a pain in the ass. There was definitely some that were a pain in the ass. There was like one where you're flying and you have to shoot enemies. You have to shoot all the enemies with your fire breath, and the fire breath hit detection could be a little bit fucky. I remember some of them you had to do a lot of freaking times over and over again. And I don't know if it was this game, but there is freaking one flying level with you gotta like take out the trains or something like that. Oh my goodness, that level took me a million tries over and over again, just trying to figure out the perfect path you have to take out all these freaking trains. Some of them were really challenging, some were not very awesome. And there is more backtracking in this game than there was in the prior games, because you're getting these different abilities that you don't have yet, and you'll have to go back and be like, oh shit, I missed this. So if you're not big on backtracking, which I'm not really a backtracking guy unless it's a Metroidvania style game, then yeah, backtracking isn't necessarily the greatest thing. But again, like Spyro 1, I found this game to be really easy to get the 100%, get everything done. It wasn't too bad. And with Crash, going back to that, it's similar. I think you even unlock like a running mode, like you can run, and that makes the speed run substantially easier, but it's the same thing with the 100% completion with Crash. Much more challenging than Spyro to get all the speed runs and collect all the relics, get all the bonus levels. So there's a lot. I feel like there's more meat on the bone in the Crash games. It's just like, how willing are you to deal with that challenge? For me, it was just too much of a challenge. I really had zero interest, but with Spyro, it was easy peasy for me, so I was fully just committed to doing the 100% for Spyro. So give or take, I mean, that just kind of depends what kind of gamer you are. Some people really love doing the Crash speedruns and collecting everything, but for me, I prefer just collecting all the gems, collecting everything in Spyro, because it was way easier. This one, though, is really tough to choose. I feel like overall Crash 2 is the better sequel because it improved more over the first game, because the first game was just worse. The first game is like just a really solid, I brought it down to a 6.5 out of 10. I didn't want to give it a 7 because those two levels were just so fucking bad, and so bad that I would really never want to go through the game again, maybe in a long time. But yeah, really no interest to go back and play that game. But with that being said, when it comes to Crash 2, oh hell yeah, it was a fair, balanced challenge game. Like, yes, there were some levels that really gave me a few problems. I had to try them like 4 to 5 to 10 times. I don't know, but I definitely was not getting angry, not getting frustrated with level design. With Spyro, it's also a really, really good sequel. It improves on everything, but I think maybe because the first game was better, it might be less of a good... And some people even say that Spyro 2 is the best game in their whole trilogy, which honestly I might agree on. It is a very sound game through and through, but I don't know. I feel like maybe with the Spyro games, I don't know, like the first two are really, really good. Oh, they're all good. We'll talk about the third game when we get there. This one's really tough. I am struggling to pick. I might just go with Crash Bandicoot 2, man. I think it is the more impressive sequel. I think it did more to add. It changed the overworld. It made better level design choices. It started doubling down on what was good in the first game and took away what was not so good. Again, with the story, there's not really much. They do add in more characters, like, I forget her name, but Crash's, like, sister or girlfriend or some shit. She shows up. And, of course, Cortex coming back. I'm going to give the edge. Shockingly, this honestly has been a whole shock for me. There's a lot of... I thought Spyro was going to be winning more of these categories so far. I'm actually surprised. This is the fun of doing the verses for me. I don't predetermine the winners. I kind of set the categories up, and then I talk my way through it and kind of figure it out as I go. And I'm a little bit surprising myself. I thought this one was not going to be as big of a challenge, but here we go. So... Crash 2, going to give that one the edge. Now we get to the third and final game in each other's trilogy. We'll start with Spyro this time around with Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon. And this game in particular I have a huge history with because it was the one that I grew up with. I played Spyro 1 and 2 at my aunt's house, and like I said, never played the Crash Bandicoot original trilogy, though I played the shit out of Crash Bash. So I was familiar with Crash and some of the characters and all that junk. Anyway, Spyro 3 was the one that I owned. My dad bought it for my sister and I, and we played the shit out of this game. And it was hard as hell. I remember this game being hard as hell as a kid. When I did the Reignited trilogy or whatever, easy peasy, no problem. That's what happens with 20 extra years of gaming experience. I got a lot better at video games than I was when I was playing it when I was 8 or 9 years old or whatever the heck, but this game was sweet. They do a lot. They added in a lot in the third game. For better or for worse, let's discuss. So they add in 5 new playable characters, each of them having specialized levels, and you have to unlock them throughout the game. There's that fucking Moneybags guy. He shows up in the second game. He's some asshole who's always asking for money to unlock this or unlock that. And in the third game, he asks for gems to unlock these new characters. And there's the kangaroo Sheila. You got the monkey who's like number 9 or some shit his name is. You get the big Yeti guy. You get the fucking military penguin dude. I'm sorry, I don't remember all their names. Sparks gets a level or 2, and the cheetah dude also gets a few levels as well. So technically there's 6 new playable characters. Some you get to play more than others. It's mainly focused on those 4. The penguin, the kangaroo, the Yeti, and the monkey. Those are the main ones. And honestly, a lot of their levels, I remember as a kid not being my favorite. Like, the kangaroo levels were always just kind of like, okay, they were fine. Like, Sheila can jump higher. She can do like a ground pound. It adds variety to the gameplay. Definitely does that. But I don't know how much better those other levels and characters were for the game. The penguin, though, those ones were pretty good. The penguin, you're flying around. You can fly in like all directions, up, down, left, right, and that shit. And he has like a missile launcher on him, so you're going around shooting enemies. Those ones were pretty damn good, I do remember. There's also some skateboarding levels. Oh my goodness, those skateboarding levels, I remember doing those a billion times as a kid. They were so challenging, but really, really fun. It's no Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or anything in terms of how it controls, but it's pretty fun. You're hitting jumps, you're collecting balloons, you could do some tricks and shit. I remember just fucking around in those levels. It was pretty fun. And the Yeti was, I remember being so excited to finally play the Yeti levels. I remember looking on the back of the case and there's the Yeti doing the boxing match. I'm like, oh, what? That's so sick. And then the boxing matches were pretty fucked up. They weren't that good. The Yeti levels were fine. Like, he's this big ass character. He's kind of slow, but you can like smash enemies with the hammer. It was okay. Better when you're a kid, not so awesome when you're growing up. Oh, and then the fucking monkey. The monkey levels were pretty rough. I feel like the controls with the monkey dude were pretty rough. Like, he's kind of like an alien or some shit. He's got like a ray gun, and you can go into like this really awkward first person mode to shoot with it. And I just remember those levels being a fucking pain in the ass as well. The controls weren't very good. So honestly, I kind of feel like they took some risks with the third game, but I don't think they all really paid off. There is definitely a lot of meat on the bone with this game. There's a ton of things to collect. I remember my sister and I playing this game for like 2 years and still not being able to collect everything. Those fucking egg thieves. So the eggs are back in the third game, and they're pretty fun because you can collect every time you get an egg, a little baby dragon comes out, and they have a different name, and they do a little animation. It's pretty cute. I like the eggs. The eggs were always preferred to collect in Spyro. But those fucking egg thief things, sometimes, like they're the one that and you have to chase them, and when you catch them, they'll give you an egg. But there are some of them that are so fucking hard, especially the late game ones. You have to go on this like racing track, and you got to hit all the boosts perfectly. You got to run the track absolutely flawlessly to fucking catch these things. I remember my sister raging when she was a kid on those levels. They were really, really challenging for young kids. For older me, not so much, but it's still a really good game. But I honestly do think it is a little bit of a step back. Maybe the weaker game in the trilogy. Though I have an immense amount of nostalgia for this game. I still own this copy, and I loved the game growing up. It was one of my favorite games. So, with that being said, let's go over now to Crash 3, which I think is by far the best game in the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. This is the one that I think of. Like, when I think about Crash Bandicoot, this is like the gameplay that plays in my head, the look of the game that plays in my head. It's got a noticeable upgrade to the graphics. The backgrounds are way more detailed. The enemy death animations are fucking awesome in Crash Bandicoot. I remember talking about them in the review. They're like, some of them are like oddly violent, like cutting Crash Bandicoot like through the waist, cutting him right down in half. Like, what the fuck? This is a children's game. And they really got the hub down at this point. It's got the kind of open, I don't know, like kind of sciencey area, and you unlock the warps, and you go in the warps, and they each have levels and a boss at the end. It's very clean. It's very just, yeah. And Crash finally gets a double jump. I can't believe it took them to the third game to give this son of a bitch a double jump. Thankfully, they do that. They have increased spin speed, like, they let you glide now. There's a bazooka to help you collect all the boxes. Like, they really give you all the tools to finally control Crash, like, really, really well. They give you everything you need. They have some extra playable character levels as well. You can play as Coco. There you go. That's her name. That's Crash's sister or girlfriend or whatever. And her levels are all really fun because you're just driving shit. They're like, you're always on, you're like on a boat, you're on an airplane, you're on an animal, just riding around, and they're friggin' awesome. They have good boss fights. Oh, I didn't talk about any of the boss fights in Spyro 3. They were pretty good. Boss fights in Spyro 3 were really good. You always get paired up with a partner, like rather with the kangaroo, the penguin. One of them are going to be in the fight with you. Some of them were a little bit tricky. I do remember. I think the final fight against the queen bitch, she was a little tricky. I think we got there as a kid. I do believe that. But anyway, the boss fights in Crash 3 I really enjoy because they got the characters that I was familiar with as a kid. You got Tiny the Tiger. I just fucking love that guy. Do think he was in the second game as well, actually, coming to think of it. They got Dingo Dial and, of course, Dr. Neo Cortex, Dr. N. Jin. He was in both. Like, they have reoccurring characters, which is good. Anyway, I just think at this point with Crash 3, they have races now, the motorcycle races. There's like 3 of those. They're really fun and iconic. Like, they have Crash on the cover, he's on the motorcycle, which ended up leading to them making a really good kart racing video game, which again is not part of this trilogy versus or anything like that. But man, I just think this game is by far the best in the trilogy, and I really wish they did like one more or something like that. Or, I mean, it is a really good cherry on top to a really good or a really good trilogy of games overall, but I think by far the third game is the best game in Crash, and I like it over... It's hard for me to say this, but I love it more, or like it more than my childhood baby, Spyro Year of the Dragon. I think it's just... And it's also, like, by far the easiest game in the trilogy, Crash 3. I only died, it says here, 4 times. I kept my notes from the trilogy review. I died 4 times in the third game, and I don't even want to tell you how many times I died in the prior games. Substantially more. That's all I could say. Substantially more. And of course, it goes without saying for all three of the games, the graphics are great throughout, but by the third game, Crash 3 looks better than the first game. Spyro 3 looks better. The music is great throughout all three of the games. I like all the music, and yeah. So, shockingly, Crash Bandicoot wins this versus. I did not see that coming. And I will say personally, I prefer Spyro. I prefer the Spyro trilogy, but I talked myself into claiming that the Crash Bandicoot trilogy is the better trilogy, though I prefer Spyro. I'm a Spyro guy. I grew up on the Spyro games, so there's the nostalgia locked in there for Spyro the Dragon. One thing I will mention, though, is that Crash did get his fourth game finally. They got Crash 4, It's About Time, and I will get to that game at some time. I did the thing, and that was spawned from the Insane Trilogy. It finally got a new game for Crash Bandicoot, and that did not happen for Spyro the Dragon, at least yet. It's been quite some time now. That trilogy was a while ago, and there has not been a reboot of Spyro the Dragon. And Crash 4, from what I've heard of reviews and some friends that have played it, it's a really good game, and I'm excited to get to it when I want to play it. But we haven't seen anything, no new Spyro game other than those Skylander games, which is not Spyro the Dragon. They just took his IP and used it to launch off a new IP. So, that's really good for Crash. Curious to see if they'll be continuing to a Crash 5, or if we'll ever see a Spyro the Dragon 4. Like, that would be sick. Or I think they have some mixed game where Spyro and Crash are both in there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe, I'm pretty sure I saw that. It's like some Rumble thing or whatever the heck. And I don't believe there was a Spyro kart racing game. I don't recall there ever being one of those. And the Crash Nitro Team Racing thing, that's one of the better kart racers ever made. I have played it, the remake one. I just lost interest at it at some point. I think I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, you can't blame me for that one. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake, that was a special thing, and I don't blame it for taking my time. But thank you everybody for giving me your time today on this podcast. Let's just run back through the categories and who won them and all that shit, just so we can confirm the winner here, just to make double sure. So in characters, sidekicks, and main villains, Crash Bandicoot wins that one. In music, Crash Bandicoot wins. In graphics and environments, Spyro the Dragon wins. In the games, we got the Spyro the Dragon wins in the first game category. In the sequels, we have Crash 2 Warped? No, fucking Revenge or whatever. Crash 2 wins. And in the trilogy category, it goes to Crash 3 Warped. Your winner is Crash Bandicoot. I am surprised by that one. I really, really am. But let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree with this versus? And this inevitably is going to lead to an all-out brawl versus between Naughty Dog and Insomniac, because I've already done a versus between Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, the first games anyway. I wanted to revisit it at some point and do Ratchet and Clank 2 versus Jak and Daxter 2, but the thing that is making that difficult is that I got through all three of the Crash games in the amount of time it takes me to get through one Jak and Daxter game, one Ratchet and Clank game. So the Crash games are very, 4 to 6 hours. Same thing with Spyro, 4 to 6 hours. Pretty easy to get through them all. And yeah, so there are other games. At some point, we'll get to a Naughty Dog versus Insomniac versus. We'll go through their entire gaming catalog, and we'll see who has left the bigger legacy on PlayStation, because they are, if not the most iconic companies in PlayStation's history. I've played so many of their games, and they never let me down. So that is an inevitable versus I will be doing at some point, but damn, that was a lot of fun, and it feels so good. So good to finally get that versus done. That's been gnawing at me for weeks. You gotta get that done, but I just haven't had time. I needed to do research on the Spyro trilogy because I haven't played them in a while, and I've needed to, restart my brain on those memories. Oh yeah, okay, I remember this, I remember that, okay, good. So I had to do some research, so thank you for waiting patiently for another Versus. I will say it'll probably be a little while until I do another Versus, because they do take a lot of work, but thank you everybody so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this Versus. I hope you enjoy the Versus series, and you can send in some suggestions for the Versus at any time. You can send them through email. I got a Twitter page, and I upload all of these episodes onto the YouTube channel GamerGX Videos, so you can go over there, subscribe, and listen. Great place to drop a comment. You have any questions about video games, wrestling, hockey, I would love to answer it live on the podcast, shout you out, all that great stuff. It'd be awesome. And with the email address, if you just want to have a private conversation, my door is open for everyone and anyone. So one more time, in terms of what we got going on for the rest of the week, the WrestleCast will be coming out, and you can listen to that. It will be just a regular recap on AEW and WWE. We're at the passing point of SummerSlam, so all that fallout is going on. It's pretty crazy right now. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan, so stick around and follow along with the WrestleCast, the HockeyCast. I'm still continuing my overview of all 32 teams in the NHL, going through where they are, where they're going, where they should be, talking about their players and contracts, all that great nerdy hockey shit, so you can stick around with the HockeyCast as well. And like I said, hoping for the Metal Gear Solid 5 review for the next GamerCast, so you better make sure you're sticking around, you subscribe, and you hit all the like buttons, and you tell 48 people every day about this podcast. Make this bitch grow so I don't have to work a normal job anymore, and I can just do this and provide entertainment for you. I would love that. Please. Alright, I'm out of here. Thank you everybody so much for listening. We'll finish it off with the winner's music, which is Crash Bandicoot. Didn't see that coming.